Welcome to So What's It Actuary About? I'm your host, Margie Mkechni, and I, along with my wide array of guests, hope to help you better understand and weather the wonderful world of actuarial science. Hello and welcome to this episode of So What's It Actuary About? Today I have Yuvanya Naidoo with us, who I know as Yuvi. And you, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know Yuvi from varsity. We studied together. We were in the trenches together. And usually just give a bit of like a background to who you are and how you came to be on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. So I came to be on this podcast because Margs has been one of my absolute best friends since we met many, many years ago.
Sure. Too long ago now.
In the trenches, as you said, yeah. So it's been an interesting journey for both of us.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Talk more to that journey. Tell me how you became an actuary. I think this is going to be a very encouraging journey, or story of a journey for our listeners. So really just speak through what that journey was for you, and especially the trials that you had and the things you had to overcome in order to actually get your FASA designation.
Yeah, I think no actuarial journey is easy, even if people make it look easy.
I agree.
And every journey is different. That's why it's called the journey. We all take things at our own pace and do things in our own time. But yeah, my qualification journey was pretty tough. Coming out of school, obviously you're one of the people that gets good marks, and that's why you go into actuarial science. Yeah. But I had struggles basically from the very beginning of first year. And so particularly my undergrad journey was extremely difficult. I struggled mostly to just adapt to varsity life.
Yeah.
And that just means that you can't perform at your best. And if you can't perform at your best in actuarial science, you're going to really struggle. It's one of those unforgiving courses that just demands 100% all the time. Yeah. So it was difficult.
And sorry to interrupt you there, but when you say you struggle to adapt, what is it that you struggle to adapt to? What were the like specific hurdles that you're like, wow, this is actually a big difference from school, or I don't feel supported, or what? Yeah, just unpack that for me.
Well, at the time, it felt like that. It was very different from school. It was big. It was new. But I think looking back, it was one of those things where maybe it wasn't me adapting. Perhaps there were other things at play that I didn't realize at the time. So, you attribute it to certain things back then. You know, maybe you think, I didn't work hard enough.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't showing up at varsity like my friends were, or anything like that. But now that I know what I know, I think there was all kinds of things going on at the same time, which would be on my control.
Yeah. Speak to that a bit more. I mean, sure. I know that's obviously quite a personal thing. Yeah. Knowing you, but right? If you are able to,
I think it's an important thing to talk about and acknowledge. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in third year, towards the end of the third year. And the reason why I say it was external factors from the beginning is because physically I wasn't feeling great.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was the problem. And it had been a problem for a long time, not just at that point of diagnosis. So that was one of those things where it was brought on by the stress of the degree and everything that came with it. But it was one of those moments where you have to just take a step back and think, why am I doing this? And is this something I want to continue?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they either have that very early on when they decide that they're going to stop the degree or not.
Yeah, after the Lorraine's curve.
Exactly. Yes, after the Lorraine's first tutorial, maybe the first test even. That was a point where I had to just be very intentional and think about, is this actually a degree that I want to do? Is this a career that I'd like to pursue?
Yeah.
So that was a life-changing event that happened at the wrong time. I don't think there's ever a right time for that to happen.
Yeah.
But it was just off the back of 3 or 4 very difficult years.
Yeah.
And it kind of set the tone for, I'm going to go forward all in and be committed to this and go all the way now and go try to qualify and do that quickly. Or I'm actually not going to do that, and that's okay as well.
Yeah, I think.
And take all the learnings that I have, because I've done up until almost third year by then.
Yeah.
And just figure out what it is that I want to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And when you were at that point, what was it that made you decide that you did want to become an actuary? I mean, as you said, your route was difficult and you had to rewrite some board exams, and it was a difficult route. I mean, it would have been so much easier to just change.
Yes.
What made you want to be like, actually, I want to be an actuary. Like, this is something I really want, and I'm going to work for this regardless of these struggles that I'm going to have to overcome?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, that at that point, it was easier to walk away.
Yeah.
I'd gone far enough down the road, but not far enough to feel like I would have wasted time or gone so far down a path that I felt like I needed to go to the end.
Yeah.
At that point, it was mostly just coming to terms with the fact that the struggles were not my fault. It wasn't because I was incapable or because I wasn't working hard enough, which is what I'd been thinking all along.
And I think a lot of students fall into that trap.
For sure.
You know, I remember in third year actuarial economics, the harder I worked, the worse I did, which was a little bit demoralizing.
Absolutely,
But yeah, I think that that's a very encouraging thing, I think, for listeners to hear, because I think, you know, there's always an element of actuarial that is quite lonely, and you're like, actually, I should give up now. I think everyone gets to a stage where they're like, why am I doing this?
I don't think there's anyone that's been through the journey that hasn't thought about giving up at least once. I think that's just normal.
Yeah. And tell me, what did you specialize in? So in previous podcasts, I've indicated to listeners that I specialize in healthcare. So I was healthcare actuary in the South African setting, and you specialized in life, right? And life insurance.
Yes.
And that's not that's a sub major for me. So I did my F100 in that. Yes. But why life insurance? You work in life insurance now. So also, can you unpack that a bit for listeners? Because maybe some listeners want to do that as an F100 or in the fellowship, just to understand what that discipline actually entails.
Sure, yeah. So when I had to make the decision of which F100s do I choose, I was a student, so I didn't really have any practical experience. So you kind of have to make the decision based on the theory that you've learned.
Yeah.
Which is a bit daunting, because you know that work life is very different to what you learn in your textbooks.
Yeah.
But life insurance was something that attracted me because of all the courses that we had done up until that point, the life insurance content was most interesting to me.
Yes.
When something's interesting, you're more inspired to study, and I just did better at it than,
and you're more willing to put an hour in.
Absolutely, yeah. And then as I started to explore some of the job options, there was definitely more demand for life and short term.
Well, because life is also, that's the first space for actuarial work,
Definitely.
right? That's like one of the most traditional fields. Yes. So there is always going to be work in that space.
Yes. So I could see that there were more avenues for me going down a life insurance path, which suited me well because that was my preference anyway. And then as I started working in the industry, when it came to decide which fellowship exam I was going to choose, either because I'd done F100s in life and investments.
Yes.
The choice to specialize in life was more obvious when I started working.
Yeah.
Because at the time I'd started to work with the UK practice as well.
Yeah.
And working in the UK market was kind of eye-opening because, when you're going through a qualifying journey, you only know the standard of your university relative to others in the same country. Yeah. So we don't know where South Africa kind of ranks internationally.
100%.
And it was at that point that I realized that our life insurance market is actually so good. It's one of the best in the world.
The insurance market in South Africa is phenomenal, like from an innovation perspective. It's unbelievable. But just to stop you there before you continue, could you, for our listeners, just define like what life insurance is? So how would you describe the discipline of life insurance?
So life insurance, what makes it different to the other actuarial practices is that you're actually looking at life events. So things like sickness or death, which is kind of morbid. But so you're looking at your policies and your products being tailored around events in people's lives. So it can be a bit
very traumatic events, generally,
exactly,
right?
Yes, life
you have like
events,
critical illness events,
exactly,
or death events that obviously leave this wake of chaos for people when they occur. And it's like, how can we help lessen that load?
Exactly.
You can't bring someone back, but you can have that element of like, it will give you a sum of money in order to help you weather this very difficult time.
Yes, and it probably then looks at much longer time horizons because you're looking at a person's life, which could be 50 plus years.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully.
Okay. So, and then tell me, so you said it was something that you were attracted to, but what in it were you attracted to? Was it like the specific calculations that you did, or was it your exposure to that space? Did you know life actuaries? Like for me, I enjoyed healthcare because I had a phenomenal lecturer. It was also a space where I was like, you can really protect people. Like they go to hospital and you can protect them in that space. And I don't know if that was a driver for you as well in thinking about choosing life insurance as a discipline.
Somewhat. I think the influences I had were almost added benefits.
Yeah.
The main reason I chose it was just because it was something that I found very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But a conversation I had at the time, I was making the decision of which F100s and then ultimately then which path I was going to choose to specialize in. A lot of conversations with people in the life space and even some that were not in the life space, I kind of got the sense that if you specialize in life, you can branch out into other areas because there's so much overlap.
Yeah.
Whereas with some of the other things, if you go very far down a path, it can be harder than to switch over to life.
Yes.
So at that time when you're not really sure, am I going to actually like life insurance? Do I want to specialize in this, spend the rest of my career doing it? Knowing that there's a way out should you want it was also kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not working at a traditional life insurance company.
Yes.
You're working at a consultancy. And so how would you compare the work that an insurance company does with life insurance and what a consultancy does? Like, how would you compare those two? And why did you choose consultancy over a life insurance company?
Yeah, so the work, there'll be more differences, especially in the first few years of your career.
Yeah.
So I think when you work in a traditional insurance company, you might spend more time in a particular role or a specific function.
Specific product.
Exactly.
Or, yeah. So it's just pricing or
exactly,
just reserving or just evaluating.
So your depth is incredible.
Yes. Become very specialized.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think you understand a lot of nuanced things and you just always become an SME in that particular area. Whereas
SME, just for our listeners?
Subject matter.
There we go.
Yes. Whereas in consulting, you probably don't have that level of depth.
Yes.
But there's a lot more breadth.
Yes.
So in a consultancy, especially a bigger one where I work, we cover most functions, almost all of them that you would in a traditional life insurance company. But it just depends which projects you work on, which type of clients you work on. So you end up doing a lot more different things. There's more variety in your work. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that, of course. But
I think it also depends on the person. Because, I mean, I worked in consultancy for a year and then I was 3 years in corporate where I was designing healthcare products. And I think each had its draw. One thing I really liked about consultancy, and I don't know if you find the same, is that you sometimes can work on like once in a lifetime projects.
Yes.
Where like a client is like, we want you to look at this project. And you're like, this is so cool. And then you never do a project like that again. And in a life insurance company sense, you don't necessarily have that exposure because you generally are working with a traditional product and you may be tweaking the benefits or the pricing or whatever, but it's not generally as sort of innovative. It feels.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there is a spectrum there, but consultancy, because a client dictates what you do, you can have such a wide variety of different things. I mean, you can have advisory, you can have audit. So speak to the difference between advisory and audit in the consulting space.
Yeah, so in the consulting space, because I work for one of the big 4 audit firms, audit is part of our work. Obviously, when our company is going to do the audit of some kind of insurance company, you do need actuaries to come in and check the actuarial specific things, mostly the actuarial reserves or liabilities.
Okay.
But if you look at the split of our work, audit is quite a small portion of that. So it's not really the focus of what we do. It's just something that we support. I think we're called audit specialists that would support the audit team. Whereas
so you would then, in that, you would file a report saying, okay, the reserves are sufficient, we're happy to sign this off, and then you would send that report to the accounting department, and they would then sort of slot that into the annual financial statement.
Yes.
Okay.
Because they would look at other things like...
So it's not auditing in the sense that you're not doing the accounting, you're just checking an actuarial function that an accountant can't, just because they don't have that understanding of risk and that understanding of the underlying liability.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
We check the actuarial methodology.
Okay, 100%.
Specific things like that. So definitely we wouldn't look at the entire audit, the entire scope of it, just the specific actuarial parts of it.
Okay.
Whereas advisory is different. It's more our work in a sense.
And can be really interesting.
It can be very interesting, yes, especially when you find yourself in a space like we're in now, where there's accounting changes coming in and there's all kinds of
Joy for 17.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you end up doing a whole lot of things. So it can be peer reviewing a client's actuarial reporting.